everyone, I'm Aislinn Campbell and welcome back to Live in the Backyard Garden with Aislinn and Joe. We do this every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. It's an opportunity for us to show off our garden, to journal our own garden, and in the midst of that, do some give some opportunities to teach some things about gardening that we've learned over the years. I've been gardening now for, in all honesty, my whole lifetime. I've been gardening with my grandmothers. I've been gardening for 2 decades, really working on this land, really getting to know the food processes and how we can really grow food here in the region. Which means I want to talk to you about weather this morning. One of probably the most important thing you have to understand about growing in South Texas in Zone 9B is the weather. Our weather here is very volatile. You all know, that we deal with thunderstorms just like we had a couple days ago, where we can deal with major straight line winds of all of a sudden a gust of 50-mile-an-hour winds blows through and breaks a tree down in your backyard. All kinds of things like that. And not even to consider the idea that we go through seasons of nothing but rain and we go seasons of nothing but drought. In addition to that, we deal with hurricanes, and here we come. It's hurricane season right around the corner. And how do we manage those types of things? Well, one of the main aspects of the way I grow and what I've learned about growing in South Texas has to do with how do I manage my gardens as it relates to that type of weather issues that we're dealing with. So let's start by talking about the thunderstorm we had the other night. There's a reason why all the gardeners and farmers that have experience with growing get super excited about a thunderstorm, a lightning storm. The reason is because the lightning actually heats the air enough to take the nitrogen and the oxygen, combine them, and then the rainfall puts them down into your gardens. So that's free natural nitrates and nitrogen in your gardens. That's why all your plants look so alive and healthy. Yes, the water is really good for them, but so is that nitrogen. So there's plenty of advantages to having that. How do you manage some of the disadvantages, like flooding? Let's talk about that. One of the things I've recently been watching is a conversation about how folks deal with flooding in the backyard, especially if you live in an area like Corpus Christi, where we deal with flooding even in the urban areas, in the neighborhoods, in our backyards and things like that. So how do you manage that? Well, the answer really is that you put organic matter down. But what type of organic matter What type of organic matter matters? And the reason is because if you dump loads and loads of topsoil in the holes that we're flooding, all you're doing is rerouting the water, especially if it's that heavy topsoil clay that we have out in our region in here. You're rerouting the water into your neighbor's yard. Now your neighbor's going to be irritated with you, right? So what's the answer? The answer is mulch. And the answer is free. It's a free answer. And so let me show you what we've done in our particular area. One of the things I knew, this garden, this area, if you've been paying attention to this, to the live that we've been doing and how I've been growing, this is a brand new garden that was literally started in January of this year. One of the things I knew about this garden was that it was a low spot in my yard. I also know the flooding very well in this particular yard for a couple of reasons. Number one, because our landlord had put in French drains, which means he understood that there was an issue with flooding on this property. Number two, the city blew up a water line in our backyard a couple of years ago, and when that happened, we knew exactly where water stood, we knew exactly how water stood, and we knew exactly what we were going to have to do to handle it. But I will tell you something that I learned very quickly, and that is that my older gardens were actually doing very well. Do you know why? Because of the way I built up my beds and used the hugelkultur style of growing, but also because I had used the mulch to create a sponge, right? So if you have water that is holding on your land, the answer isn't to run it off onto someone else's land. The answer is to hold the water on your land. And how do you do that? You put mulch down. You put lots and lots of mulch down. So let me show you around so that you can see a little bit about what I'm talking about. You can't see the decline that I'm talking about here, but there is a true decline that goes off into this corner. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is to gain this water over here and keep it to where this stuff begins to break down. Just continue to fill this hole with all of the organic matter I can come up with all of the mulch, with all of the chicken trimmings that I'm throwing out of things, with the trees I pick up on bulk mulch, on bulk tree cutting, landscaping days. Keep an eye out for those types of things. Fill your holes with that type of material, and then what you do is you're saving the water on your land.
So I could go to Home Depot and buy 15 bags of topsoil for $2 a piece and fill in this hole.
But all it's going to do is run the water to a different place. It's not going to hold the water. It's not going to. You're going to create another problem. Is essentially what you're dealing with. Now, the early days of mulch, you may see a little too much mildew. You may see too many roly-polies. But what you're doing is you're mitigating the soil and you're creating a long-term answer to the problem. Okay, so one of the things I noticed over here as I was dealing with the watching the rain the other day, because that's the first big thunderstorm I've come up with that we've had since this new garden has been built. You see, we dug out a hole right here because what's that thing that's down there?
The water meter.
The water meter's there?
Is right underneath that green.
Okay, so we needed to make sure there were certain things in this particular yard that we need to make sure we have access to, right? So we dug that open so we could know where it was all the time. That hole right there was full of water when I came out here the other day. But the rest of my garden is also full of water. It's just full of water in a completely different way. It's not just a standing bowl of water. It's a sponge that has held the water. Now I'm creating good, beautiful soil for my garden. In addition to that, if I had planted on the flat ground back here, what I'd be dealing with is essentially standing water where my vegetables, especially my squash, cucumbers, tomatoes, anything like that that doesn't like to be wet like that is going to be in bad shape. It's going to die. So those are the types of things you have to deal with. Some of the other types of things you have to deal with is the wind. Now, you may have less problems with the wind in an urban area like this because you've got fences and you've got neighbors that help block it. But if you're dealing with more of field type of growing, then you have to work to create different types of plants, different types of bushes, and different heights of plants. This helps the wind to have a different movement through your garden, so it's not just a straight line rush that knocks everything down, kills all your green beans, knocks your sunflowers over, knocks your tomato plants over, whatever. All the different types of ways of creating permanent structures is the way that we deal with all of these types of different planting, permaculture planting, the types of biodiversity that we're looking for in the long-term growing. So one of the other things I think is really important to talk about, and that is, and I've kind of jokingly become like the weather goddess. I pay attention to the weather. I got really, really excited about weather when I was in college, and I didn't really understand exactly why I got so excited about weather, but I watch the weather religiously. Every single morning, I get up and I look at the weather so that I have an understanding of what's coming. I can even begin to watch the radar. I don't just listen to what the newscaster is telling me or the weather forecaster is telling me. I don't just look at what the temperatures are or whatever. I look at the radar, and I begin to understand, okay, what's happening? Is the wind moving fast? Is this going to break up when it hits the shore, when it runs into another different type of wind? What's going to happen with that weather? And the reason why that's so important is that, number one, when it's the time of year of freezes and things like that, you can prepare, right? Number two, when you're dealing with planting, you know to get ahead of time and plant, get your seeds in the ground. If you can get your seeds in the ground right before a rain, boom, they pop right up. Like my black-eyed peas have done. My other types of plants have done. That's an opportunity to utilize nature into the benefit of you. And other types of things you can do. Don't do any kind of pest control right before it's going to rain, because that stuff's going to be gone and washed right away. Do put fertilizer on. If you put fertilizer on, has the opportunity to sink right in, right? Okay, so what you doing back there behind the screen? Anything interesting? All right, let's go over here. All right, now this is my oldest garden. This is the garden we actually call garden number 1. The reason that I wanted to come over to this garden today is that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about field planting versus gardens. Kitchen gardens, edible landscape, that type of concept. Field planting is when you go in and you take a tractor or a tiller or whatever, you till up straight line rows in a giant field, a huge piece of property, and you plant for mass quantities of people. You're planting for agricultural production purposes at a high level. That's what field planting is about. Most of the people that I talk to on a daily basis are not field planting. They're garden planting. Gardens are beautiful. Gardens are sanctuaries. Gardens are places for birds and flowers and vegetables and your enjoyment, and they're close to your back door. That's why the kitchen garden existed for grandmother. The kitchen garden existed so that grandmother could run outside and harvest the end of the day's produce and then come in and cook it immediately that night, right? So this is your opportunity to create art. This is your opportunity to turn it into exactly what you want it to turn into. Just because you see the fields as you drive by every day doesn't mean your garden has to look like that to be successful. In fact, you will have the least amount of enjoyment and success from a garden. You may have a buku amount of zucchini one year. You may have a buku amount of peppers or tomatoes one year. But if your goal is not to be an agricultural producer of commodity items for everyone, then you need to focus on the joy of your garden. You need to focus on the planting, just what you need to walk in the back door and get exactly what you need from your garden. And that's a lot about what this garden is about for me, right? So I'm growing just enough of the stuff that I need to grow for my own place. I wanted to show you a couple of things that I'm harvesting right now. Of course, in this garden right now, I'm harvesting eggplants, I'm harvesting peppers, I'm harvesting kale, I'm harvesting Swiss chard. Let's see. Soon I'll be harvesting black-eyed peas. I'm still harvesting coriander, all different kinds of herbs. I've got beautiful flowers back here. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, onions. I'm harvesting onions right now. Dill seed, all of those types of things. Something else I'm harvesting though. Take a look at this. This is Cuban oregano. It is what I would consider an edible landscape. Before the recent summer, this recent year, I pretty much just grew it. It was pretty, and it's easy to grow. In fact, if you're interested, I can make a cutting of this, give it to you, you can stick it in the dirt, and you'll be growing Cuban oregano as well. But this time of year, when you have this much beautiful Cuban oregano, and you have a massive quantity of basil, there's a garden behind you. Mm-hmm. You have a massive quantity of basil and Cuban oregano, there's so many things you can make with that. And one of the places that I've recently launched a video over on my YouTube channel where you can see how I turned Cuban oregano, basil pesto, and a little bit of New Zealand spinach into a summer pesto that's perfect for pizzas, chicken wings, all the different kinds of things that you want to cook in your backyard. But just remember, there are so many things that are just beautiful landscape that are also edible that no one else would even know about. And no one else would even be able to know that it was a vegetable that you're growing. Another part of that concept of edible landscaping, kitchen gardens, and turning your gardens and your spaces and your property and your lawns into something that you enjoy and you can use every day. Okay, last but not least, I want to move over to garden number 3. Garden number 3, you say? You've been watching every week, and you haven't heard me say anything about garden number 3. Well, that's because it's not exactly a garden yet. Right now, it's a collection spot. It's a chicken yard. I've got a couple of trees in here, but the goal with this is to get it prepared by the fall in order to do fall planting. Okay, so what am I going to do? Some of the things I'm doing right now, while my chickens still have access to this beautiful green, after the rains, they've gotten some chance to really dig it up, to really tear it up. Every day I'm throwing not just stuff from the garden. Look over here. You can see I'm throwing in cuttings from the garden. That stuff they can stomp, they can eat. they can just turn it into compost if they want, right? I'm trimming from around my house all the different types of extra anything that's coming out. Mountain laurel, rain tree, sorry, not mountain laurel, lantana, rain trees, broken limbs coming off of after a thunderstorm. Walk around, pick those up. The other thing is to keep an eye out for your bulk landscape pickup. When the city does a bulk landscape pickup, it's an opportunity for you to go and get some items from your neighbors. Keep an eye out for neighbors that are putting out bags of leaves. Pick up those bags of leaves, especially if you have chickens, because what the chickens can do is help you to take out of that mixture of stuff anything you don't want in it, any types of insects or pests that you don't want in it, any types of seeds or weed seeds that you don't want in it. That's the benefit of having chickens. And I will tell you over and over again, I think everybody needs some chickens in a backyard garden in their backyard. But if you don't have chickens, those are still good items to have. You'll just need to probably mulch them a little bit longer. You'll probably need to compost them a little bit longer before you commit them to a garden that you're going to potentially grow stuff in.
So all of these leaves that we're seeing die and dry up will eventually be gone, leaving only the sticks, twigs, branches, and trunks.
Correct. And then really what I'm going to do, and because, okay, so a lot of times I will tell you that what you need to do to build your hugelkultur bed is to make sure that you dig down about a foot deep, so that you're giving yourself the topsoil off the top, but you're also going to put the logs and the branches down inside of a hole. If you're dealing with a flooding issue, like what we were talking about and then how I did that one in the back, I don't want to go any deeper. I want to go up. So it kind of depends on what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with dry, arid space, dig down, give yourself about a foot deep and the size of the raised bed that you want, and then you fill that hole with all of the different ingredients. And I will be doing a series of videos of this process as I begin to create this process. I'll be doing a series of specific videos related to hugelkultur and prepping a bed. Some of the old ways that, some of the other things you might look up as it relates to this type of growing is back to Eden growing. That's another way of looking at it. Permaculture, biodiversity, regenerative agriculture by Mark Shepard. These are all the types of people that are using these methods. Yes, Joe?
The Harvey, of course, was one of those things that you don't want to happen to your community, but I will tell you that one of the positive byproducts is that all of the trees that blew over had to then be cut up and placed on the yard for on the curb for big brush pickups. I mean, we're talking almost every single house in the city had some kind of downed tree. All of these original 5 beds, garden number 1 here, were built with Harvey materials.
Look at this. You know what that is right there?
That's a trunk from...
That's exactly what that is.
From Harvey.
And I was like, oh, what is that? Is that mud? Who scratched in there? Did a chicken get out? Oh, no, that's just the trunk of a tree, bogar. So I probably need to put some soil over the top of that. Like you can see some roots spinning out. But after a big rain, I had a wash off that happened. So sometimes I have to go back in and add to it. But basically what you have is a breakdown of a giant bed of the garbage you cut off of your land.
Question,
So, yeah.
What trees did we plant here in garden number 3? We did that about 2 years ago, I guess.
I believe that this is a pawpaw, which means I need another one. I bought that from Native Dave. I think she sold me 2. Mm-hmm. I think I took 1 to the learning garden and kept 1 here. I didn't understand at that point you had to have 2 to pollinate it.
And this tree here?
So, yes, this is a pawpaw. And then that tree over there is a mountain laurel. Mm-hmm. I love mountain laurels because they're so beautiful and they make such a beautiful smell and such beautiful flowers. Usually for us, they blossom in February all over the state of Texas. But above and beyond that, they're also nitrogen fixing trees, which is really nice. Nitrogen fixing, like we talked about the thunder and lightning helping to bring nitrogen into the soil. Those plants actually help to create nitrogen in the soil as well. So what am I planning on doing over here in terms of prepping? I'm going to begin creating the mounds around. So this fence line will be 1 whole row right here. And then just like I've done with art over here in this garden, I'll begin to create and form the island that exists out here where I can grow things. So I'll have a trellis to use. I'll have trees to help the early stages of the trees. And I'll begin planting in this area over here. And then one of the things we intend to do to keep plants off of the wooden fence line and stuff like that is to extend this tunnel for the chickens all the way down that fence line. Now the chickens will help us keep the weeds off the fence line while I continue to create the growing. Now, of course, we're going to need to change this fence line a little bit. Open it up on one end over there, open it up on this end over there, just kind of depending on what we feel like is the right thing to do. And at that point, basically, I can't start the true prep of this garden aside from just collecting the materials that I'm going to need for it until the chickens are done. Once the chickens are done, I can lock them out of it, and then they don't get to come over here anymore. Then we open up the fence line, rebuild the fence the way we want to, and start building our gardens. So we'll be doing that in about a month. All right, last but not least, I want to give you the updates on our chickens. But before I do that, so that we don't get distracted, we can finish up with the chickens, I want to remind everyone that Joe and I do a podcast called Dinner Table Talks. We launched episode 37, I believe. Episode 36 came out last Monday. So if you haven't watched that one, catch up on that today. Tomorrow, Monday morning, we start episode 37, and Joe is finishing the editing on that right now. And then, of course, you can always check out my YouTube channel. And if you're in need of some help getting your beds ready or your yard ready, or even your larger scale homestead farm situation where you want to do some field planting, reach out to me. I am happy to help you out with that. I have you can DM me, you can send me an email, you can give me a call, whatever you need, I'm here to help. All right? Okay, so let's talk about the updates with our chicks and our baby chickens and our ladies and everything. First thing, they got their jewelry. Do you see? The blue, the green, the purple. They all have their bracelets on now. That helps us with keeping up with who's who. That helps us also know if we like to pick names with our children. And so we began picking the names with our children this last week. We've got one pretty girl named Maleficent. That's her right there. We looked up her, what type? It's Minorca? Oh no, the Minorca is the other one.
Oh, don't make me.
Oh goodness.
I don't remember.
I forgot the breed.
This time around, we did get some breeds that we weren't too familiar with.
Yeah.
Because they looked interesting.
So that's her, and then the other one that's all black over there, and she's gonna have big white earrings. We've named her Barbs. One of the kids named her. We've got a ladybird in there. We've got a Cardi in there. We've got a Sam E. And I also think we have a Kung Pao and chicken teriyaki chicken.
There are 2 chickens left to name. Your son would have to do that remotely, in Corona times. So we're waiting on him to name one of 2 remaining chickens. I'll name the last one, but we are both lobbying that we name those last 2 chickens Teriyaki and Kung Pao.
I love it. Think about it. And the teriyaki and Kung Pao are the barred rocks, and so they're the twins basically. And yesterday they were like chickening up to each other, and I was like, oh, we're having a Kung Pao teriyaki fight. Anyways, we love our chickens. Our backyard chickens are like pets to us. Just like I said last week, though, you'll have to remember that you have a flock and certain years to care for, but also to remember that they are farm animals. They are farm animals, and things happen. And so, coming up with the different ways that you can help protect your flock are extremely important. One of the things that happened just yesterday was we had an old watermelon that had been around since I think the fall, and nobody had cut it open, and it had started kind of rotting on the inside. So Lily got all excited and decided she was going to take it out and throw it in the chicken coop. So she threw it against the log, and it busted open, and I grabbed a piece of it and brought it over to the babies. And so basically they're getting their first baby chicken food now. They got a nice sized watermelon yesterday. They got a little bit of corn. It's corn season, so if you haven't gotten any corn on the cob, make sure you're reaching out to your local farmers that grow corn on the cob. All right, and then let's go show them around on what it looks like in terms of flooding and how the chickens handle the mulch and what they love about their run after a rain. So when the water line blew up that year, this whole entire backyard bed was completely underwater.
There were thousands and thousands of gallons of water.
You can actually tell that dirt there is a different type of dirt than topsoil usually is.
That's the substrate dirt around the line that they packed around the line. It was all just coming up.
So it just blew through. All of that stuff blew through. So the way that we handled that flood and the way that we handled those holes was to put Man, we have a garbage pile back here. Ugh. So you can see how we manage flooding, basically.
Yeah, there was a big hole here where the crews had to come in to fix the line, and I used these logs that could not be then used for hugelkultur beds. I had to sacrifice these logs to make basically a dam under there.
Yep.
And then we filled it back in with soil.
And you can see that we pick up leaves from neighbors and friends, and then it just gives the chickens like all this compostable material to mess with, to play with. I can put the food in here. We've got the leaves. I think these leaves have been picked up a few times and thrown back into there, but they throw them out every time they're digging around in here. You can see all the different types of things we have. A part of this is not just for managing the flood. It's also, of course, we're trying to create compost for the future. It's also a place for things to hide. So as this grows, I can just cut the tops of this out, but leave it growing so that it creates a nice place for the chickens to hide in case there was any type of issue, which we have dealt with
and
just
some
last
shade.
week. It gives them some shade. It also is a place for other types of things to hide. Lizards and roaches and all of those types of things. And if they hide in here, that's actually good news for the chickens, because the chickens will find them and they will eat them. So if I create lots of spaces in here that make things want to hang out, it's more likely that my chickens are going to eat them. On top of that, after a rain, they dig a hole in every space they can find. For two reasons. Number one, it's a nice place to get a chicken bath, and they're taking themselves a chicken bath and getting down in a hole and wiggling around. The second reason is they're digging up grubs, earthworms. I kind of wish they wouldn't eat my earthworms, but they got to eat something and might as well turn it into an egg, right? But they also eat grubs, any grubs that they find in the ground. Of course, during June bug season, we're going to get a lot more grubs in the soil again. All right, so that's really a lot.
Well, why
of
do
the
you
stuff
say that?
Do what?
Why do you say that?
Because the grubs are June bugs.
A grub, that big 2-inch, 1.5 inch
Well, not every
long?
single one of them.
But
That's
they-
just a larva.
Oh, okay.
But generally speaking, the grubs that you're dealing with that are causing you a problem are June bugs.
I did not know that.
Well, now you do.
I
You learn
learned
something
something.
new every Sunday.
Right.
All right. I hope you're learning something new every Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us. Definitely go and check out some of the other things that I'm working on and let me know if I can help you out. Have a wonderful Sunday. I will see you all very soon. Hopefully, we're going to start to see each other in person from time to time. Bye, guys.